Hi everyone, my name is Phil and welcome to Phil Does 3D. I'm a multimedia and 3D artist and I stream on Twitch weekdays from 5 PM Pacific time in the US, 10 AM in Australia and 1 AM in the UK. Just a reminder for you guys in Australia that are watching, it's 10 AM now because we finished daylight savings here. It's always 5 PM Pacific time in the US though when I stream because I work on US time. So that's the reason the stream is starting at 10 in Australia. Okay, now I'm just making sure my mic is not muted or anything like that. Last week we were working on an Art Deco building, interior and exterior. And what I'm doing is I'm going to create that building in the Unreal Engine 4.15.1. I created the building in UDK in 2011. I'm going to be recreating it in the new version of Unreal because I want to see what the changes are like in the lighting. So that's what we're working on. Last week, you guys that were watching would have seen I was working on this decorative piece for the top of the railings. We were having problems with the UV mapping. I corrected that. We're actually having problems with the texturing here, and that was a problem with the UV mapping. So I fixed that up in Max, and all I ended up doing really was running a cylindrical UV map around this lower part of the urn, and that fixed up our UV map, and that allowed me to finish our railing section in Unreal. So if you remember last week, guys, we were working on this railing section that separates the upper floor from the lower floor in the building, and I've actually put that all together now in a blueprint. So that's a complete piece of geometry made up of separate pieces of geometry. So what I mean here is these urns are separate and they're instanced in the engine. We do that so that we can save on polygon counts and texture memory. These wrought iron pieces here, metalwork in the railing is also instanced I should say. So we only have one instance and then we just copy that around the outside, and again that saves on poly counts and memory. So that allows us to reduce our memory size as much as possible for this piece of geometry, and we can reuse these decorative pieces here for other parts of the interior of the Art Deco building, the railing sections and other parts of the building. The same with this wrought iron work. So that's what we have done, and that's the finished piece. Now again, what I've done is I placed all of my meshes in the Unreal editor, and then I created a blueprint for that. You probably can't see it because I'm in the way, but there's a blueprint here that's been created based on that, and that just means that whenever I want to place that object, all I have to do is drag this blueprint into my level, and it's all ready to go for me to place wherever I want to inside of Unreal. Okay, just makes it easier than having to rebuild this using the different bits and pieces. It created all together as a prefab using a blueprint in Unreal. Makes placement much easier. Now actually I'll give you a bit of background on me. I'm an architectural visualization artist. I've worked for games companies in the past, and I've also worked in film and cinema. So at the moment I'm working as an art viz artist, but I've worked in 3D for more than 10 years. So by all means, guys, if you've got any questions or anything you're not sure about, please feel free to pop into chat and ask me. If you want to pop in and say hello, that's always welcome. If you just want to watch, that's completely fine. I'm on Twitch to encourage you guys to do 3D. That's the whole reason I stream on Twitch. So I'm happy to help anyone if they have any problems. I'm not suggesting I know everything, but if I can help, I'm happy to try. So we've been working on our assets here now. This is the Art Deco building we're going to be taking into Unreal. And what I've done is I've just lined up all the interior assets in a row. And this way it helps us not to forget something that we may need. And again, having worked for game studios, this is generally the way that artists will work. They'll lay out all their assets in a row and work on them one by one and bring them into whatever game engine they're using to make the game that they're creating. And again, like I said, it just helps you to not miss anything. If we go into the building, you can actually see that I do actually have the building populated here with all those assets inside. That you don't need to do that. I've done it just so that when I was creating the building, it helped me to put everything together. And all I've done is I've taken those assets out one by one and laid them out in a straight line outside of the building. Now let's jump back out. So we've got to decide what we're going to work on next. So we did that railing section there. We could work on the stairs. Maybe we should go with something a bit different. We did this wrought iron gate last week. Let's see here. We could do another one of the light fittings. There's one more Art Deco ceiling light that needs to be placed. We just select that so Max doesn't jump all over the place. We could work on this, and again, this is just a flat, these are just flat planes with a texture, and what I like to do is I want to, as I'm recreating these assets for the new engine, because these assets were made back in 2011 for UDK, they're quite low poly, and we can afford to up the polygon counts a bit now, just to make the asset look nicer in the engine. So we may end up doing that, I think. I'm going to be doing that for most of the assets, not all of them, but most of them. Some of them I want to retexture as well, just to make the textures look a bit nicer. And when I do that, I'll either be using Substance Painter or Mari by the Foundry. Mari is my preferred 3D paint program, but I do use Substance as well. As for today, let's maybe work on maybe this asset. Yeah, because that's the only other light that we have to work on. We did the sconce, the wall sconce, the Deco wall sconce here. So the only other light I think that the level needs, apart from the main Art Deco chandeliers, is that ceiling light. Now this just uses an emissive map, and when we place this in the level, when we start building it in Unreal, we're going to be placing a light source at the front and a light source at the back here inside of the sconce. And the one at the back will throw light up the walls. The one at the front will just help simulate light on the front of the actual light fitting itself. Because at the moment that's just faked in an emissive map. So you're not really getting any light spilling out onto the geometry on the front of the model itself, and putting a light in front of it will just help to fake that light source look. So you'll actually get light hitting the front of the model or spilling out. Hey Sniper Echo, good to see you. So yeah, we finished our main piece here, that decorative, that piece that separates the top floor from the bottom floor. And we have our decorative urns here with the gold tops. I made them quite shiny, so that a lot of varnish on that, but less varnish here on the actual railings, because again, this is something people touch quite a bit, and the varnish would have worn a bit there. But we still have our wearing happening along the edges here as well, just in spots. And again, also remember we put our some more depth into our wood pieces here in the paneling, because we're going to be seeing these quite a bit when we do the cinematic and fly up through the center of the stairwell here. And again, we have our we instance our urns so that we reduce polygon and memory, and we also instance these wrought iron pieces. But you can see when they're all placed together, they all fit together quite well. So that's that piece done, and again, that's a blueprint. And again, like I said, you can't really see it because my camera's in the way. But that's been assembled as one blueprint so that we can easily place it in the level. So today we have to work on a light. We'll probably work on the light. I was going to start work on the stairwell, the main stairwell, but I think that's a bit too similar to what we did last week with the with this section of the railing work. How do I instance them? It's quite easy, Sniper Echo. You just, let me see, let's place something here. Okay, let's work on that wrought iron piece there. Say you just brought the model in, it has no wrought iron in it at all, and you've got to place your wrought iron in there. You would simply drag it in, your original mesh. You're going to right click it, you're going to go to edit, and you're going to go to duplicate. Okay, now that's an instance of that. So basically, as far as the program is concerned, Unreal is concerned, it's only reading that into memory. So yeah, you're only using the poly count from that object and the texture from that object in memory. And the engine is actually instancing this one to reference this one. So you're using like a tiny amount of memory compared to creating a separate object. And you just keep doing that for as many as you need. So you just keep going edit and duplicate. And all of those end up being instances of this first object. So it's only using the memory of this first object. It's using a tiny amount of memory for the instances, but not anywhere near as much as making a whole new object again. So yeah, that's the way you instance objects and in Unreal, and it's the same sort of thing when you're doing texturing work. So if you're creating, where are we? Your materials. Here, we have all of our materials for our objects. You would just do a similar sort of thing. You duplicate it, and again that will create an instance copy of that material. And you'll do that often with materials that, let's open this glass material up. You'll do that with materials that have a lot of options, such as this glass material. It's a good example. You'll see that there's quite a bit going on in this texture, in this material I should say. We have our reflection and we have our opacity and normals and refraction to make that glass material. Now, if I wanted to make another piece of glass that maybe wasn't transparent like that, but maybe had a bluish tint to it, instead of me having to recreate the entire material again and use all of these all of this calculation for the material that the engine has to do, if I just needed to change, say, the color through a color node here, just like an RGBY sort of thing. So all I would do is change that one node, and the best thing to do in that instance would be to duplicate the material, and that way Unreal is going to use all of the same references here for the first material, but only recognize the change in the second color. So it's not reading it all in again, it's not working on a whole new material, it's just looking at the first material. You've duplicated it so it knows that I don't have to reread all of this that I've got from the first material. It only changes that color, so you're saving a lot of processing that way as well. Yeah, so it's good for not only objects or meshes, but materials as well. And you should instance or duplicate, we'll call it duplicate because I don't want to confuse you guys. It's actually an instance, but Max calls them instances. But I'll call it duplicate because Unreal calls it duplicate. But duplicate, instance, the same thing. And anyone that works in 3D ArchViz knows that, particularly if you use V-Ray, they call proxy objects in Max. If you want to if you're creating a really dense mesh scene, it's going to be too much memory for your PC to handle while you're working on it. You create a proxy object and it's loaded into memory then as it's needed. Now, that's not the sort of, I shouldn't have probably used that as an example, it's a bit different, but an instance is similar. It's just reading the geometry once and just referencing that as it does its rendering, whether that's the game engine or Max. And in Unreal, they call it duplicate, but it's an instance. It's the same thing. So, and it is, try as much as you can to duplicate your geometry because you'll save yourself a lot of texture, memory, and polygon count that way. And with a game engine, you want to try and get your game to run as quickly as possible, so it's always a good thing to do. Alright, now, yeah, so we worked on that railing, and I was going to start working on the stairwell, but it's a bit too similar to the railing, so let's do something a bit different. Let's do, I think we'll do that, this light fitting here. And that way the only other light fitting we've got left to work on is that main chandelier. We'll tackle that a little bit later. Not today, but at some stage. It's just, as an object, it's quite complex. It's made up of a lot of pieces. And I probably will try and actually use glass for that material. That's why I created that glass material in Unreal, because I want to try and, instead of using a texture map like I'm using here, I'd like to actually use glass, an actual material, glass material. We'll see how we go though. You can simulate it quite well with bitmap, but using a proper glass material, because it's the Unreal Engine uses physically based materials really well, could look interesting. So we'll leave that though for another time. We will get to it, but just not today. We'll work on this. This is an easier example. Again, it's going to be similar to the way we worked on that sconce, that wall sconce that we were working on at the start. So again, this is just a flat plane. I'm just going to isolate this. There is no geometry on this at all. It's just a texture, and I don't want that. I want geometry now because it's going to look much nicer when we get the light actually hitting some geometry as opposed to hitting a flat plane. Now again, people will say, well, you can simulate this with a normal map, and yes you can. But a normal map is faking geometry. It's not real. And if you look at a normal map in silhouette on whatever object it is, you're going to see it's not real. Now that's what parallax mapping is good for, because it actually simulates the actual geometry itself. But it's always going to be better, particularly with fine geometry like these lines here, and if you actually create that as mesh, as opposed to trying to fake it in either using parallax mapping or normal mapping. Because again, normal mapping will work, but if you look at it in silhouette, so if you ever get to an angle where you're looking at the light like that, you're going to notice that it's faked because it's just a flat plane. Particularly with the light source being so close to the geometry, you really, in this instance, I'm going to actually use geometry because it's going to give a much nicer play of light. And so long as we're careful, we're not going to up the poly counts hugely anyway. And today's graphics cards can handle much higher poly counts, so we'll do that. That's what we're going to do. Let's just get this centered in all of our viewports. Let's start with the top viewport, I guess. And let's go into our creation tab, and I think what we'll start with is a tube. Let's work from the center and work our way out. So I'm going to pull out a tube here. Now I'm going to jump into my orthographic here so I can get a better idea of what's going on. Actually, my side view is probably better. Right, let's just move that up. Let's play with our values. Now you'll notice in Max, if guys that use Max, once you've released that object, you can't change it, but you can if you go into Modify tab. You've still got access to all those parameters. You could by all means use the scale tool here to manipulate it, but you may as well use it here until you turn it to an edit poly. The height is way too high, so let's pull that back. I'm just going to try and judge how high I want it in relation to the light fitting, and I think I'll pull it back just a bit more. That should be good. Okay, let's jump into our top viewport again. We could get away with that. It's a little stair-stepped, you see, it's not a nice smooth round circle because we're only using 18 sides. We could take that to 24, which will soften it up a bit more. I think I'll leave it as 18. No point in going too high on this. It's a small object in the level, in the building. Even though, like I said, we have a little stair stepping happening here, it's not a completely smooth round circle. It should be fine for what we need. Width is okay. We've got our height done correctly. Now, at this stage, I'm not going to move. Oh well, I'll move it up into place. It'll be easier, I guess. I was going to say I'm not going to move it up. I'm going to work this way, but we'll actually work to the geometry. It'll make it easier. I'm just going to pull that in. Go into my orthographic here. Now I think I will end up softening the edges of this. These really should not be hard edged, and you know I hate hard edges on anything, as you guys know that watch the channel. It's going to position this a little bit better. You know, let's take it to 20 sides. Let's see if we can get a. Yeah, we'll leave it at 20 sides, just a little bit smoother. Let's now. What we could do here is we could right-click and edit poly, convert the tube to a polygon, and do it that way. But I'm going to put an edit poly modifier on top because that's one of the advantages of using Max. We have this modifier stack, so we don't have to commit to anything. We can just delete the modifier to go back to the original. And it's a great way to, one of the best things about Max is this modifier stack. So we'll use it as well. Take advantage of that. Just going to pull in here so I can get a closer look at my edges. Okay. I'll go into shaded mode too. It makes it easier for me to see my edges. I could turn edge mode on. I prefer not to if I can get away with it without using it, because it just starts to clutter up my viewport a bit more. So by going into shaded mode here, come on Max, by going into shaded mode as opposed to constant colors, I can see my edges anyway, so I can get around it that way. I'm just looping that edge there. I'm going to select the inner edge and I'm going to loop that one as well. Now we're going to throw another modifier, the chamfer modifier, on. Again, we have chamfer in an edit poly, but this modifier is a newer version of it, so it works better. I prefer to use the actual modifier. Let's throw down 3 segments. I'm going to pull it in a bit and just curve it out a little bit more. Okay. So now we have a nice soft edge on the bottom ring. Again, that'll help with the light when we place a light source here. Again, that's another reason why I do want to soften these edges up, because the light source is going to be near them, so I don't want them to have a really hard edge. Alright, that's good. Now we can collapse our stack that we're happy with the pieces it is. So we're collapsing down to an edit poly. Alright, let's work on a couple of other pieces here now. Let's do... maybe we'll do this outer edge here. Let's see if we can use the tube again. Okay, let's jump into our modify tab and let's reduce our size to 8. Let's rotate our object. going to turn angle snap off here. Get it into near position, and then I can start modifying the underlying geometry in just a minute. So again, we're using a tube with 8 sides to better match that octagon in the background. We could do it this way. There are many ways to do this, and I've shown you a couple of different ways to do this sort of thing in the past. Doing it this way is probably the easiest for what we're going for. Let's just jump back. My mesh is going to be way below it, so there we go. Pull it up. Let's work out how high we need it to be. So we don't need it to be quite that high. Let's pull it back a bit to about there, and pull it up into position. Back into our top viewport. Okay, now let's throw an edit poly down. Go into vertex mode. There you go. Having a problem seeing it here for some reason. It may be because I'm looking at the wrong viewport. I'm just going to see if looking at it from below is better. Yeah, it should be better. Now I can see it. The reason I couldn't see it is because I was looking from the top down. I should be looking from the bottom up. So just changing my viewport here. Alright, let's start moving these into position now. So we've selected those verts. I'm just going to pull them over. I'm going to pull these verts over, select both of them, and I'm going to pull them down. I'm going to select both of these corners here and pull them in. We'll select this corner and we'll pull it out, and this one we'll pull it out, and both of them, and we'll pull them up. And select both of these corners and we're going to pull them in. I'm also going to turn on shaded here because I don't like my viewport changing colour like that. Alright, this is the first run. We're going to run a second one inside of this one. It's going to be a little smaller. So again, let's jump into our orthographic here and see what's going on. Alright, and again we want to soften the edges up a bit. So we'll go into edge mode. We're going to loop the outer edge and the inner edge. Same thing, we're just going to throw down a chamfer modifier. We're going to go to 3 segments, and that's 3 edge loops. When Max calls it segments, it's just 3 edge loops going around the outside. One for the center and one either side, just to help give it a more of a rounded look. We're going to pull back on the tension a little bit, just to make the edge actually rounder. Too much tension, it goes to more of an angle. Less tension, it gives it a rounder look. And we're going to pull back just a little bit on our amount. Just to give it a bit of a soft edge there. Okay. Now I want to run another one on the inside of this one. So I'm going to jump into my bottom view again. I keep calling it top view, but it's actually looking at it from the bottom. We're going to collapse that stack. So we're back to an edit poly. I'm going to get my scale tool here, hold down the shift key. Working in just the X and the Y, I'm scaling down a copy, not an instance, and okay. I'm going to jump into my side viewport, and I'm going to scale the height down a little bit as well. And I'm going to move it down just a touch, just so it's sitting a little bit below, below in this viewport, the top ring. So we have our top ring, and just a little bit lower we have our second smaller bottom ring. You can see it just in here. So our top ring, and a little bit lower is our second bottom ring. And that just gives it a bit more interest, as opposed to just having the one ring there. We have two, so it just gives it, makes it a little bit more visually interesting. I'm going to jump back into my top view here and select that second ring. I may pull it down just a bit more. I think that's better, just so we can see it a little bit better here in that they're actually two separate objects. Alright, let's jump back into our top view. And now let's work on this octagon here in the middle. We're going to do the same thing again. We have our object selected. I'm just going to hold down the shift key. And with the only in the X and the Y, not in all three axes. So not in the Z, just the X and the Y. I'm going to scale a copy down. I'm going to have to alter this one using an edit poly. So I'm matching it up to the top and the bottom here. I'm going to go into vertex mode. And again, we've got this problem where we can't see it. So I'm going to jump back to the top viewport. No. It's actually because it's hidden inside the geometry, so before I do that I'm going to pull it down. So we're going to pull it down to around here, back into our bottom viewport, back into our vertex mode. Now we can see it. Let's pull it in. Select the two on this edge and pull them in. And because we copied one that we'd already done, we don't have to worry about the chamfering because it's already done. Jump into our orthographic here. Now I may end up pulling it up, but I won't do that until I do these edge pieces, so let's work on them. Okay, and we can do those simply with a box, I think. So we're going to just create a box like that. Find it in our viewports here. Again, we're going to move it up. And again, it's creating it down here because that's the 0 light position down the bottom. My model's actually above that, so that's why I have to move them. If I move this to the 0, 0, 0 position, I wouldn't need to keep moving my geometry around, but it's not really a big deal to move it around anyway. Okay, jump back into our orthographic here. Let's reduce the height because it's way too thick. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to work in my left viewport here. We'll turn angle snap on. If we find we can't get the angle correct, then we'll turn it off, but no, that should be fine. I like to work with angle snap turned on as much as I possibly can. It just makes working easier. You'll know you're going to get the correct angle all the time, but for some objects it just won't work. So. Just reducing the length here a bit, just to get it to better fit in where we need it. Maybe make it just a bit bigger. I want to make sure those two corners here and here intersect the geometry. Okay, let's jump into our top viewport. And again, we're going to have to rotate it around. And we're going to move it over. I'm just going to change the color of it to better match the rest of it. That way it won't look quite so jarring. So let's try and find the color it's using there. No, not that one. That one. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Just going to deselect it for a moment. Alright, now let's see what's going on here. Let's move it in a little. I've just changed my view mode to local here so I can get it the movement in the correct angle at the correct angle. I need to pull it over a bit. Looks like we need to rotate it forward a little bit more. Increase the length. Move it over just a bit. I think the length has to come up just a bit more. I have to decide whether I want that corner to actually join to the bottom here or to the top, and I think having it more toward the top edge as opposed to the bottom edge would look more interesting. I don't want that intersection happening there with that corner piece. So what I'm going to do is throw down an edit poly. I'm going to select the two polygons on the outer edges here, not the ones at the back, but the ones on the outer edge. Going to move them forward a bit. Just looking at top edge there. I'm going to turn angle snap off now. Now it's just a question of me lining it up correctly. Alright, now I don't want that problem where the geometry is showing behind that lip. So again, the same thing, I'm just going to grab my vertex, go into vertex mode here and grab those two and pull them back. I'm going to undo that for a moment. You can grab them in the right mode here. I have to go into local mode.